This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Sins of the Father, Part 17. And pardon any panting you hear in the background, I got a backseat full of dogs. Now, when we left off, the OGs were preparing to meet with the youngins. And while by no means were any of them perfect, they understood just how crucial it was for them to give the youngins the game before they blew up their own families and burned down their respective organizations. Since Rennie and Maribel were not going to get anything else out of Jeff today, when they got the call from True that the Queen Mother wanted them back at the St. James estate, they were one way. As the ladies were filing in, so were the fellas. Wise was the last man in the room. All eyes were on him, and Q said, "Ain't nothing like honeymoon exhaustion, even in the middle of a funeral." All the men dissolved into laughter as Wise said, "Go ahead, bro. She was insatiable before the wedding." Samuel said, "All right now, be easy." Big Wood said, "You want to talk? I've been calling my mother for days and can't get her on the phone. Then she sent me a text this morning asking why I was blowing her phone up. It's like she forgot I'm her damn son. When I call, she's supposed to answer." Q said, "Nigga, grow up. Quit acting like Jody and Baby Boy." And all the men dissolved into laughter again. Meanwhile, none of the women looked happy to be in their meeting room. Selima looked like she was on the verge of violence. When Marisol asked Selima if everything was all right, she said, "No, everything is not all right. It's bad enough that y'all couldn't wait until after my honeymoon to do all this funeral mess." Catherine said, "Oh, my apologies. I'm sorry that we couldn't plan in advance for your Uncle Nigel to die at a more convenient time." Selima said, "That's not what I mean. I mean, we could have did this when I got back." The Queen Mother said, "Selima, you don't hold bodies for 2 weeks." Selima said, "Well, my bad. I don't know how none of this works. All I know is y'all interrupted my nut." Rennie said, "Oh yeah, that'll do it. That would have pissed me off too." The Queen Mother said, "Anybody else got anything they want to get off their chest?" All the younger women looked at one another and the floor and started mumbling, "No, I'm good. I really don't want to be here." So Catherine said, "Don't everybody get shy now. Y'all know where y'all are. And while y'all have privacy in the guest house, and all of the bathrooms, meeting rooms, and the main suite in the main house, every other inch of this property is under surveillance. Now, I haven't intentionally eavesdropped on any conversations, but y'all know I've walked in on a few. I've interacted with one or more of you, and we've had a few, and I've accidentally overheard a few. So I know that several of you have some things you need to get off your chest. Don't be shy now." Maribel said, "Fine, I'll go first. My stomach has been in knots, and I have had ringing in my ears for days. It started when I thought that Donovan was in danger, and finding out that he wasn't exactly in danger did not make it better." Stephanie said, "That's till she found out Donovan taking old girl down." True said, "Steph." Maribel said, "No, she's right. We've been on again, off again for several years now, and I'm the only one not getting taken down." Rennie said, "Wait a cotton picking minute. You mean to tell me that you ain't had none of D? Girl, you have no idea what you missing." True said, "Rennie." Rennie said, "Then you definitely don't want to see them videos, girl." The Queen Mother said, "Rania Johnson." Catherine said, "Don't focus on what he's doing with Portia. Focus on finding him and planning what you're going to do to Portia when you get your hands on her. That'll fix your stomach and your head." The Queen Mother said, "I know that's right." On speakerphone, Ma Brenda yelled, "And stay in prayer, Maribel. Remember that God can use even this." Stephanie said, "And pay me no mind. I joke a lot, but remember that he picked you." Rennie said, "Yup, and if you don't want him, I'll gladly take him back." The Queen Mother said, "What happened to Phil?" Rennie said, "Oh, I left that joker in L.A." Marisol said, "But I thought you two were getting along so well." Rennie said, "We were, right up until I found out that he was born and the sex was whack." Marisol said, "Well, I hope you let him down easy." Stephanie said, "No, she pulled a disappearing act. Came to Miami and found a replacement already." The Queen Mother said, "I hope you're prepared for his reaction." Catherine said, "Because when you play with somebody's feelings, you do not get to control their response." Marisol said, "And you'll also need to be prepared for the other man's response." Rennie said, "I couldn't care less about either of their responses. I am single. I don't owe nobody nothing. All that matters to me is that the one I want wants me back. And that if Phil pops up on BS, my little boo keeps that same energy. Because if he doesn't, and Maribel throws Donovan back, it's over for him." Maribel said, "I can't do this. I'm not competing for Donovan's affections. Rennie said, you better thank God you don't have to. Then Maribel looked at the Queen Mother and said, you're gonna need to rein her in. Rennie said, or what? I promise you can't take me. Maribel said, you better ask Portia how I give it up. Drew said, all right. I think you might be misunderstanding Rennie. She's simply telling you where she stands. Rennie said, exactly. You and I are not friends. I don't owe you any loyalty. Donovan and I are friends. And I can be his platonic friend. But he knows, and now you know, that if at any point he changes his mind, or you change yours, so will I. Now, you don't have to like what I'm saying. And we could throw hands if you want to. But a real woman would respect it. Because I'm not plotting on your nigga or trying to throw salt in the game. I'm simply telling you what it is. Don't be mad at me. Be mad at the broad who kidnapped him and took that D by force. Because if I didn't get the help that I needed, that could have been me. Thanks again, Angie. Appreciate you. Angela said, no problem, Rennie. Marisol said, Renee's delivery might be crass, but she has a point. Before your father and I married, he had a past too. And like Donovan, he made a choice. And that woman and I had a somewhat similar conversation. And while her delivery was a little better, the point was the same. So I focused on my man and made sure that we were solid. Eventually, she fell for someone else. And they're still in a happy, healthy relationship. And she and I are now friends. And Rennie looked at Stephanie, and they both looked at Nadia. And Nadia pretended she didn't see them looking at her. The Queen Mother said, Angela, you have anything you want to get off your chest? Angela said, I'm just not pleased with my husband's decision to take on the role as kingpin. That's not what I signed up for. The job he has is dangerous enough. Our daughter was almost kidnapped. I'd rather not have him in this life in danger, putting me and our children in danger. And I don't... Catherine said, wait a minute. Aren't you a Lopez? Are you not next in line for the throne? Marisol said, she only found that out a few years ago. She started out a Spencer. Catherine said, a who? Marisol said, that's the last name that Angel and his parents assumed when they moved to the mainland and got out of the life. She had no idea that she was a Lopez until she was hiding out in Puerto Rico. Catherine said, oh, I must have missed that, because I was going to say, you got some nerve. Angela said, and I'm not interested in being a queen pin. Catherine said, oh, so you must have issue with your sister being the queen pin too, huh? Stephanie said, you don't even know the half. Between her and Corey, I get it from both directions. Angela said, no, you don't. I've given you and that whole situation up to God. That's between you, God, and Corey. I don't like it, but it's nothing I can do about it. But I can do something about me ever being in that situation. And I can tell you now that I refuse. I am a legitimate businesswoman and a woman of God. I lead a women's ministry at church where I help women apply coaching and biblical principles to the trauma that they've endured in the past so that they can heal the places in them that are keeping them from God's best, traumas that are impacting their ability to be successful in life and relationships, experiences and choices that are keeping them from fulfilling their purpose and living with peace. I can't do that and be married to a kingpin. And I don't understand what my husband is even thinking. And I understand his need to protect everyone in his family. But I don't know how to be a kingpin's wife. And I don't want to. The Queen Mother said, hold on. You talking about leaving my son? Angela said, no. I'm talking about keeping him out of this job. The man that I married was a legitimate businessman in law enforcement. That man is also a recovering alcoholic who a few days ago needed a meeting because the stress of everything that was happening had become too much. I don't know what's going to happen when he gets right in the thick of things. How's he going to handle pharmaceuticals, homicides, and hoes? Stephanie said, emphasis on the hoes. Angela said, exactly. I don't know how you do it, TT. Marisol said, I pray. I trust God, and I trust my husband. Angela said, no offense, Catherine, but we are here at Nigel's funeral. And we just met his 5 illegitimate children. Catherine said, no need to keep reminding me. Marisol said, what are you asking me, Angela? Angela said, are we going deep or are we keeping this all surface? Queen Mother said, speak your mind. Marisol said, yes, please do. Angela said, it just seems to me that other women come with the territory and I'm not built for that. I've been down that road and I don't plan to go down it again. Marisol said, are you asking me if your Uncle Manny has cheated on me. Angela said, yes. Marisol said, I wouldn't know. And let me tell you why. Meanwhile, in the room where the men are meeting, Corey just asked Q a question. Corey asked, do you have any idea what this secret is that Melissa has that she won't share with me that apparently has something to do with me? Q said, no, I can't say that I do. What happened? Corey said, well, I was having a conversation with True, and she wanted to deflect. So she told me that I needed to call Melissa and let her know how that conversation worked out. But when I called Melissa, Melissa said that she wasn't in a position to share it with me and that God would reveal it in time. She said, well, if she won't tell you, then I guess you're going to have to wait on God. What were you and True talking about? Could it be related to that? Corey said, I doubt it, but I'll follow up with Stephanie. Idris said, speaking of Stephanie, what you gonna do, Corey? Corey said, I'm gonna wait on God about that too. Idris said, right, but are you leaning towards encouraging her to step down? Or Corey said, I learned from the last time that I can't encourage her to do anything. All I can do is be an example of what I want to see in my home. Protect my daughter, set boundaries, and trust God. And until something significant changes or I get some direction from God otherwise, I'm just going to have to continue doing that. But I'm not giving any more ultimatums. Idris said, fair enough. You're a good man, Corey. A good father. And Stephanie and Kari are blessed to have you. Manny said, speaking of fathers, Big Wood, have you talked to yours? Wood said, no, I ain't talked to that nigga. He had the audacity to have Zora call me and ask me where Tasha's kids are. Alejandro asked, and what you tell her? Wood said, I told her it wasn't none of his damn business, but they were taken care of. Alejandro said, good. I don't want him to know where they are. Not until those test results come back. And we find out just who was behind Tasha getting on that yacht. Wise said, you took a test, man? I thought you said that wasn't your kid. Wood said, it's not. But since my mother and True got questions, I'm going to give them concrete answers. Wise asked, she's still salty with you? Wood said, the question is, am I still salty with her? And I am. Wise said, but why? Wood said, 'cause I am. Jealousy ain't attractive. Neither is acting without thinking about anybody other than yourself. Idris said, neither is covering disappointment with anger. Big Wood said, what's that supposed to mean? Idris said, you disappointed. You thought you could love her out of her toxic independence. Take it from me, you can. That's a battle she got to fight with herself. Otherwise, she gonna turn it on you. And it sounds like that's what's happening. Wood said, thanks for sharing, but I didn't ask. Idris said, I don't give a damn whether you asked or not. You too smart for your own damn good. You seem to be able to take direction in every other area of your life. You striving for perfection. And you seem to think that the only men who can tell you anything is the ones who've been perfect in your eyes. Let me be the one to tell you that Saint Andy, he wasn't perfect either. Wood looked over at Q and Q said, sorry, bro. He right. My father was a lot of things, a lot of good things, but he wasn't perfect. Most of the advice that he gave us, he could give us because he made his own mistakes. You're in a room full of good men. Eat the meat. Throw the bones away. Manny said, I want to talk, but I need to know that you're going to listen. Wood said, go ahead. Manny said, you had an unexpressed expectation. You fell. You fell hard. And in your mind, if she fell for you, how you fell for her, she wouldn't want to be in this life. You thought that your love was enough to heal the places in her that were so broken that she'd choose this over her family's restaurant, over starting a restaurant of her own. You thought your love would erase the pain associated with the memories of burying her first love. Big Wood was shocked into silence. Manny said, yeah, she told me about Bo, and you couldn't have thought I was going to hire her without knowing all about her family. You got to know that I know you too. Your reaction to her throwing Tasha off that boat had nothing to do with Tasha, did it? Wood said, yes and no. I've known Tasha most of my life. She's always made stupid, impulsive decisions. She would have never got on that boat if my pops didn't put a battery in her back. He was the problem, not her. The whole situation could have been handled differently. But by throwing her off the side, True said that she don't respect me. She don't trust me to make the right choices. And more important than that she'll let the things that other people do affect her ability to see the big picture. She didn't think about how Big Dro was going to respond. She didn't think about how he'd react when he found out that Tasha was dead, or what he'd do if he ever found out that she was the one who did it. She didn't even consider that she was putting her freedom on the line, potentially bringing scrutiny to the families, leaving two fatherless children motherless. Yeah, I'm disappointed. Disappointed because I thought she was more healed than that. Q said, but we all in the process of healing, bro. You know that. Every one of us is at a different stage of the healing process. And none of us will be 100% whole until we stand before the throne. Hell, if you were 100% whole, you wouldn't have got so angry with True. Corey said, is it possible that the engagement, the land, were both just tools in the toolbox that you were using to repair True so that you wouldn't have to focus on repairing you? Big Wood said, I'm good. Samuel said, if you were good, you wouldn't have that murderous look in your eyes every time somebody mentions your father. True buried her first love, and she buried her father, and you were there when she pretty much lost everybody in her family, except her one sister. And in her mind, she buried them too. And that's something that you and True have in common. The people who hurt you get buried, literally and figuratively. Yeah, your father's still alive, but the way you move tells me you buried him in your mind a long time ago. Big Wood said, this the part of the conversation where I'm going to tell all of y'all to move on. I think I got the point. And they all burst out laughing, except for Big Wood. Idris said, we're going to lay off you. But I hope you know that you got a community of men. While we aren't your father, we got your back. You're not alone. And you don't got to carry all that weight by yourself. Then he turned to Q and said, before you hear about it from anybody else, I want you to know that your mother and I ended things this morning. Q said, thanks for telling me. Is my mother good? Idris said, nigga, you didn't ask me if I was good. Ask her yourself. Are you good? In a few days, you're going to take your uncle's seat at the table. I know your father's rolling over in his grave. Q said, come on, Idris, don't. Idris said, don't what? Don't remind you of who you are? Don't tell you that this is a bad idea? Well, it is. If I were you, I'd let Catherine take that seat. Nobody else wants to say it, but Nigel left a lot of holes that need to be filled and a lot of trash that needs to be taken out. Catherine knows the closets that the skeletons are hiding in and where all the bodies are buried. She also knows where all the graves are that have already been dug. You deserve to be able to keep your hands clean. This life ain't for you. Manny said, Idra, you know that that's not how this works. Idra said, and I've never agreed with it. If Nadia and Anan didn't agree that Stanley could take my seat, I intended to withdraw from the 5 families, recommend another family, transition the entire Charles family out of the life. Samuel said, whoa. And he said, that's unheard of. Nobody's ever done that. Idris said, I'm not nobody. And there's a first time for everything. I'm not forcing no man or woman to take my seat. And I'll end it all before I shovel coal on somebody else's head. Q said, I respect that. And I respect you even more. Idris said, don't. I learned that from St. Andy. Because if your Uncle Nigel didn't take your grandfather's seat, your father was going to do the same thing. And Q was speechless.